The automatic doors of the ER slid open, and chaos poured in with the winter wind. "We need help. Multiple traumas. Family of 5. The paramedic's voice cut through the usual Christmas Eve noise. Carols playing softly from the waiting room speakers, the smell of pine from the small decorated tree near the nurse's station, the relative calm of a holiday evening. I dropped the chart I was reviewing and ran toward the ambulance bay. Through the glass doors, I could see 3 ambulances lined up, lights still flashing red and blue against the falling snow. My breath fogged in the cold air as I pushed through. The first stretcher came through fast. A man, maybe 40, unconscious, head wrapped in bloody gauze. Behind him, a teenage girl, crying and clutching her arm at an unnatural angle. Then a woman, her face contorted in pain, screaming something I couldn't quite make out over the chaos. "Daddy's not waking up! Someone help him!" The teenage girl's voice was raw with terror. I reached for the man's stretcher, checking his pupils with my penlight. One dilated, one constricted. Not good. Possible intracranial hemorrhage. "Get him to Trauma 1! Page neurosurgery now!" Another stretcher. A boy, maybe 10 years old, covered in glass, his chest moving rapidly, too rapidly. Respiratory distress. Trauma 2. And then the woman again, being rolled past me, and this time I heard what she was saying. We were going to Christmas dinner, just Christmas dinner with my mother. We were almost there. The kids were singing carols, and then her voice broke into a wail that sounded like something fundamental tearing apart. A nurse grabbed my arm. "Dr. Reyes, there's a 5th patient, infant. She's coding in the ambulance." My heart stopped. An infant. Coding. I sprinted back outside. In the 3rd ambulance, paramedics were performing CPR on a tiny body. She couldn't have been more than a year old. Christmas dress soaked with blood. Blonde curls matted against a face too pale, too still. "How long?" I shouted, climbing in. 3 minutes. Witnessed arrest. She had a pulse at the scene but crashed en route. I took over compressions, my hands barely spanning her small chest. "Everybody inside now, move!" We rolled her through the ER doors at a run, and I knew with absolute certainty that this Christmas Eve was about to become the worst night of someone's life. What I didn't know yet was that it would also become the night that would teach me the most important lesson of my medical career, that sometimes saving lives means more than stopping hearts from failing. It means keeping families from falling apart. My name is Dr. Sai. Noah Reyes, and 10 months into my residency at Hospital St. Halstead, I'd learned that holidays were the cruelest times in emergency medicine, not because of the increased volume, though that was real, but because of the weight of expectation. People were supposed to be happy on holidays. They were supposed to be with family, celebrating, making memories. Instead, they ended up in the ER, and those memories became trauma. Christmas Eve was particularly brutal. December 24th, 7:47 p.m. Most of the world was settling in for family dinners, wrapping last-minute gifts, watching children's eyes light up with anticipation. In the ER, we were preparing for the inevitable: car accidents from drunk drivers and icy roads, kitchen burns from ambitious holiday cooking, heart attacks triggered by stress and overindulgence, domestic violence that escalated when families were forced together. The shift had started quietly. Dr. Catherine Vale was the attending physician, a woman in her mid-50s with iron-gray hair and a reputation for being brilliant, but cold. She approached emergency medicine like a general approaches war, strategically, efficiently, without emotional attachment. "Reyes," she'd said when I arrived for the evening shift, "I hope you said goodbye to your family before coming in. We're going to be here until dawn." I hadn't seen my family. My parents were in Houston, celebrating with my aunts and uncles and cousins. They'd wanted me to come home, but I'd volunteered for the holiday shift, partly because residents without seniority get stuck with holidays anyway, partly because I wanted the experience, but mostly because watching other people's families celebrate felt harder than just working through it. "I'm ready," I'd told Dr. Vale. "Good, because Christmas Eve brings out the worst in people. Remember that when you start feeling sentimental." The ER was decorated half-heartedly. A small tree, some garland, a sad menorah someone had set up near the vending machines. The staff wore Santa hats or reindeer antlers over their scrubs, trying to inject cheer into a place where cheer came to die. The waiting room had a handful of patients: a woman with a migraine, a man who'd cut his hand slicing ham, a child with an earache. Normal holiday stuff. Then the call came through at 7:43 p.m. Major MVA on Route 12, multiple casualties, family vehicle versus semi-truck, ETA 4 minutes. MVA, Motor vehicle accident. The words that made every ER doctor's stomach tighten. Dr. Vale had moved into command mode immediately. All hands on deck. Reyes, you're primary on the adult male. Santos, take the adult female. Morrison, you've got pediatrics. Clear trauma 1, 2, and 3. Contact surgical on call, get anesthesia down here, and someone tell the chaplain to stand by. The chaplain. That was never a good sign. I'd scrubbed my hands, put on a trauma gown, and positioned myself at the ambulance bay entrance. Through the windows, I'd watched the ambulances arrive, watched the paramedics moving with urgent precision, watched the stretchers emerge one by one. 5 patients, 1 family. And somewhere in that chaos was a story that needed to be pieced together, while we simultaneously tried to save 5 lives. The infant was my priority the moment I saw she was coding. Everything else faded. The adult male with the head injury, the teenage girl crying for her father, the woman screaming about Christmas dinner. There was only this tiny body, this stopped heart, these lungs that wouldn't breathe on their own. We wheeled her into Trauma 3, the pediatric-equipped bay. Nurses swarmed around us. Someone called out vitals that barely registered as compatible with life. Someone else drew up medications. The respiratory therapist prepared intubation equipment. Continue compressions, I ordered, taking my hands away so someone else could take over while I assessed. Get me an IO kit. We need access now. Intraosseous access, drilling directly into the bone marrow when you can't get an IV line in a collapsed vein. It sounds barbaric, and it is, but it works. I found the landmark on her tiny shin, positioned the drill, and pushed. It went in smoothly. We were connected to her circulation now. We could give medications directly into her bloodstream. Push 1 of epi, I called out. Epinephrine went in. We waited. Compressions continued. Check pulse. Nothing. Continue CPR. Another round of EPI in 2 minutes. I looked at the monitor. The rhythm was agonal. Disorganized electrical activity that wasn't generating a heartbeat. Not quite a systole, but not far from it. Who's with the parents? I asked without taking my eyes off the infant. Mother is in Trauma 1 with a pelvic fracture and possible internal bleeding, someone reported. Father is in CT scan for head injury. He's still unconscious. Other children? Teenage girl, 14, broken humerus, being treated in Trauma 4. Boy, 9, respiratory distress from chest contusion, stable in Trauma 2. 5 family members, all injured. Parents both critical. And this baby, lying on my table, her heart refusing to beat. How old is she? I asked. A nurse checked the chart the paramedics had started. 14 months. Name is Sophie Brennan. Sophie, 14 months old. Just learning to walk, probably. Just starting to say a few words. Just beginning to understand that the glowing tree and colorful packages meant something special. Push another round of epi, and get me a pediatric cardiologist on the phone. I want to know if there's anything else we can do. The second dose went in. We continued compressions and then... Wait, the nurse doing compressions said. I feel something. We stopped. Everyone held their breath. On the monitor, the agonal rhythm had changed. There was organization now. QRS complexes appearing at regular intervals. I have a pulse, I said, my fingers on Sophie's tiny femoral artery. Weak but present. Resume ventilations, hold compressions. Let's see if she maintains it. We watched the monitor like it was the only thing in the universe. The heart continued beating. The oxygen saturation began to climb. The respiratory therapist successfully placed an endotracheal tube. Sophie Brennan was alive, for now. But she wasn't stable, and neither was the rest of her family. I stepped back from the table, letting the pediatric team take over now that we had her stabilized enough to transfer to the PICU. My hands were shaking slightly. Adrenaline crash, the inevitable aftermath of high-intensity resuscitation. Dr. Vale appeared in the doorway. Good work. She's not out of the woods, but you gave her a chance. Her voice softened almost imperceptibly. The rest of the family isn't doing well. I need you in Trauma 1. The mother is asking for information about her children, and she's starting to decompensate. We might need to sedate her to prevent further injury, but she deserves to know what's happening first. I followed her to Trauma 1. The woman I'd seen screaming about Christmas dinner was on the table, pale and trembling. Her pelvis was wrapped in a stabilization device. IVs ran into both arms. She was perhaps 38 years old, with blonde hair now tangled and bloody, and eyes that held a specific kind of terror I'd learned to recognize, maternal fear. "Where are my babies?" she gasped when she saw me approach. "Please, where are my children?" I moved to her side. "Mrs. Brennan, I'm Dr. Reyes." I've been treating your youngest daughter, Sophie. She's stable right now and being moved to the pediatric intensive care unit. She wasn't breathing. In the ambulance, she wasn't breathing. We got her heart started again. She's breathing with help from a machine, but she's alive. And Emma? And Kyle? Her voice rose. Someone tell me about my other children. Your daughter Emma has a broken arm. She's being treated and she's going to be fine. Your son Kyle had some trouble breathing from the impact, but he's stable. I paused. Your husband is undergoing tests right now to check for head injury. He's being cared for. Robert was unconscious. I saw him. There was so much blood. The neurosurgeon is evaluating him. I promise you, we're doing everything we can for your entire family. She started crying. Deep, wrenching sobs that made her pelvis shift and caused her to cry out in pain. The combination of emotional and physical agony was almost unbearable to witness. We were just going to Christmas dinner, she whispered. Just dinner at my mother's house. The kids were so excited. Sophie was wearing her new Christmas dress. Emma had been singing carols in the car for 20 minutes. Kyle was complaining that Emma was singing off-key. She laughed through tears at the memory, then sobbed again. How did this happen? How did everything go so wrong so fast? Dr. Vale stepped in. Mrs. Brennan, Catherine, we need to take you to surgery. Your pelvis is fractured and you're bleeding internally. We need to stop the bleeding. No! I need to see my children. I need to see Robert. You will. But right now you need surgery or you could die. And your children need their mother to survive this. Catherine's face crumpled. Promise me they'll be okay. Please, promise me. I wanted to promise. I wanted to tell her that everything would be fine, that Christmas morning would still come, that her family would heal. But I'd learned not to make promises I couldn't keep. I promise we will fight for them, I said instead. Every single one of them. We won't stop fighting. She nodded, and the anesthesiologist stepped in to begin sedation. Within moments, Catherine Brennan was unconscious, being wheeled to the operating room. I stood in the empty trauma bay, surrounded by discarded medical supplies and the lingering smell of blood and antiseptic. Christmas music was still playing somewhere in the ER. Silent night, painfully ironic. Dr. Santos appeared beside me. He was my supervising resident, 15 years older than me, with the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much. Hell of a case, he said. 5 family members, 5 separate traumas. How do we even begin to coordinate care? We do what we always do. We treat each patient individually while keeping the whole picture in mind. He paused. But Reyes, this one's going to be hard. Family traumas always are. Because you're not just treating injuries, you're trying to keep a family's world from shattering completely. How do we do that? Honestly, sometimes we can't. Sometimes the injuries are too severe, the loss is too great. But we try. We document everything. We communicate clearly. And we remember that behind every chart is a person who was driving to Christmas dinner with their family. He walked away, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the weight of 5 lives hanging in the balance. I checked on each family member systematically over the next hour. Emma, the 14-year-old, was in an orthopedic bay having her arm set. She was conscious and terrified, asking constantly about her family. Is my dad going to die? She asked when I checked on her. Your dad is getting the best care possible. The neurosurgery team is with him right now. I saw him. His eyes weren't open. There was blood everywhere. Head injuries bleed a lot, but that doesn't always mean the injury is as bad as it looks. We're running tests to see exactly what we're dealing with. And Sophie? The paramedics were doing CPR. I saw them. This girl had witnessed everything. She'd seen her father unconscious, her baby sister dying, her mother screaming. She'd experienced it all while trapped in a vehicle with her own arm broken. Sophie is alive, I told her. She's in intensive care, but her heart is beating. Can I see her? Not right now. You need to get your arm taken care of first. But I promise, as soon as it's possible, we'll arrange for you to see your family. Kyle, the 9-year-old, was in better shape physically, but psychologically devastated. He sat in his bed, staring at the wall, not responding to questions. Classic shock response. A child psychologist had been called, but on Christmas Eve, staffing was limited. Robert Brennan, the father, was the most critical after Sophie. His CT scan showed a subdural hematoma, bleeding between the brain and skull. Not massive, but significant. The neurosurgeon, Dr. Patricia Morgan, a sharp woman in her 40s, was deciding whether immediate surgery was necessary or if they could manage it conservatively with monitoring. His Glasgow coma score is 8, she told me. He's not fully unresponsive, But he's not conscious either. The bleed is moderate. If it expands, we'll need to evacuate it surgically. For now, we watch closely. I found myself in the unusual position of being the point person for this family, the doctor who'd seen all of them, who could synthesize information, who could potentially communicate between the different teams treating different family members. It wasn't my job, technically. I was a first-year resident, but someone needed to do it, and I'd been there from the beginning. At 9:30 p.m., I took a break in the residence lounge. The small room had a coffee maker, a couch that smelled vaguely of desperation, and a TV showing a Christmas movie with the sound muted. I sat down heavily and pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls from my mother. 2 texts. "Mijo, we miss you. Thinking of you tonight. Stay safe." I texted back. "Working a tough case. Family car accident. I'm okay. Tell everyone I love them." Her response came immediately. "We're praying for them. And for you. You're doing God's work." I wasn't sure about God's work, but I was definitely doing something. I closed my eyes for just a moment, trying to center myself, trying to find the emotional equilibrium I'd need for the rest of this shift. The door opened. Dr. Vale stood there, her expression unreadable. "Reyes, I need you in the PICU. Sophie Brennan is crashing again." I ran. The pediatric intensive care unit was on the 4th floor. I took the stairs 3 at a time, burst through the doors, and found Sophie's room immediately by the cluster of people surrounding her bed. The monitors told the story: heart rate dropping, oxygen saturation plummeting, blood pressure barely registering. "What happened?" I asked, pushing into the space. Dr. James Chen, the pediatric intensivist, was at the bedside. She was stable for about 30 minutes post-transfer. Then she started having runs of ventricular tachycardia. We gave amiodarone, cardioverted once, got her back to sinus rhythm. But now she's in cardiogenic shock. Her heart isn't pumping effectively. Why? What's causing it? Unknown. Could be myocardial contusion from the impact. Could be hypoxic injury from the arrest. Could be something we're missing. He looked at me with tired eyes. "We're doing an echo now to see if there's structural damage." The ultrasound machine was wheeled to Sophie's bedside. The cardiac sonographer placed the probe on her tiny chest, and images appeared on the screen. The 4 chambers of her heart, the valves opening and closing, the walls contracting, except they weren't contracting normally. The left ventricle, the heart's main pumping chamber, was barely moving. "Severe left ventricular dysfunction," the sonographer said. "Ejection fraction maybe 15%. Normal was 55 to 70%. 15% meant Sophie's heart was failing." "Options?" Dr. Chen asked. "We maximize inotropic support, medications to increase heart contractility. We might need to consider ECMO if she doesn't respond." ECMO, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, a machine that would do the work of her heart and lungs while her body tried to heal. It was life support in its most literal sense, and it came with significant risks in an infant this small. "Start dopamine and dobutamine infusions," Dr. Chen ordered. "Get the ECMO team on standby." I watched them work, feeling helpless. There was nothing for me to do here. This was beyond my skill level, beyond my training. These were pediatric specialists handling a critically ill infant with expertise I didn't possess, but I couldn't leave. Something kept me rooted to the spot, watching Sophie fight for her life. "Dr. Reyes," a nurse said, touching my arm, "you should go. There's nothing you can do here right now. Her mother is in surgery. Her father is unconscious. Her siblings are terrified. Someone from this family should have someone watching over them." The nurse's expression softened. "You can't be that person for all of them. You'll burn out. Maybe, but not tonight." I stayed for another 20 minutes, watching the medications slowly take effect. Sophie's blood pressure stabilized slightly. Her heart rate became less erratic. She wasn't better, but she wasn't actively dying in that moment. "Go," Dr. Chen said without looking away from the monitor. "Check on the rest of the family. We'll call you if anything changes." I left reluctantly and went back downstairs. It was nearly 10 p.m. now. The ER had filled with the usual holiday chaos, minor emergencies, people who'd waited until Christmas Eve to deal with problems they'd had for weeks, the occasional drunk who'd started celebrating too early. Dr. Vale caught me at the nurse's station. "Brennan update? Sophie's in cardiogenic shock. They're managing it for now, but she might need ECMO." Vale's jaw tightened. "And the mother? Still in surgery. Pelvic repair is complex. The father? Stable. Still unconscious, but holding steady. The other children? Emma's arm has been set. She's in a room waiting for admission to the pediatric ward. Kyle is being monitored for pulmonary contusion but seems stable. Vale nodded, processing. Then she said something that surprised me. I want you to coordinate care for this family. All 5 patients. You'll be the communication hub. Talk to each specialty team. Keep track of everyone's status, and be the one who can give the family comprehensive updates when they're able to receive them. Me? I'm a first-year resident. You're also the person who's seen all of them, who understands the full picture. And frankly, Reyes, you care. I can see it. Don't try to hide it behind professionalism. Her voice was sharp but not unkind. Caring is dangerous in this job, but it's also what makes good doctors. Just don't let it destroy you. She walked away before I could respond, leaving me with a responsibility that felt simultaneously honoring and terrifying. I went to check on Emma first. The 14-year-old was lying in a hospital bed, her left arm in a cast, staring at the ceiling. She looked so young and so old at the same time, still a child but forced into adult awareness by trauma. "Hey, Emma," I said softly. "How's the arm feeling?" "It hurts, but they gave me medicine." She turned to look at me. "Have you heard anything about my family?" I pulled a chair close to her bed. "Your mom is still in surgery. It's going well so far. Your dad is stable. The doctors are watching him very carefully. Sophie is alive and being cared for in the intensive care unit. Your brother Kyle is doing okay, just like you. Can I see them?" "Not yet, but soon, I promise. This is my fault," she whispered. I froze. "What? Emma, none of this is your fault. I was the one who wanted to go to Grandma's. I was complaining that we never spend Christmas with her, that we always just stay home. So Mom and Dad agreed to drive there for dinner." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "If I hadn't complained, we would have been home. We would have been safe. Emma, listen to me." I leaned forward. "Accidents happen. They're not caused by wishes or complaints. They're random, terrible events that no one can predict or control. This is not your fault." "Then whose fault is it?" It was a question I couldn't answer. Whose fault was it when a semi-truck driver fell asleep at the wheel and crossed the median? When a family driving to Christmas dinner was in the wrong place at the wrong time? When 5 lives were shattered by seconds and physics? Sometimes bad things just happen, I said. And all we can do is deal with them as best we can. She turned away from me and I let her have her silence. I checked on Kyle next. He was sleeping now, sedated for comfort. His oxygen levels were good. His chest x-ray showed bruising, but no pneumothorax, no rib fractures. He'd been incredibly lucky. A chest impact that could have been fatal had instead left him with injuries that would heal completely. I reviewed his chart, made notes, then went to find the neurosurgery resident managing Robert Brennan's case. I found her outside the neuro ICU, reviewing scans on a computer screen. "Dr. Reyes, right?" she said. "I'm Dr. Amanda Pierce. You're coordinating the Brennan family case? That's the assignment I just got. How's he doing?" "Holding steady. The subdural hematoma hasn't expanded, which is good. He's still not responsive, but his pupils are reactive and his vitals are stable. We're hopeful that as the swelling decreases, he'll regain consciousness. Time frame? Could be hours, could be days. Brain injuries are unpredictable." She pulled up another image. "The good news is we don't see any other structural damage. No skull fracture, no contusions in the brain tissue itself. The bleeding is confined to the subdural space. And if it expands, then we drill burr holes to evacuate it. But I'm optimistic we won't need to." One small piece of good news in a night of bad news. Catherine Brennan came out of surgery at 11:47 p.m. Dr. Marcus Thompson, the trauma surgeon who'd operated on her, found me in the hallway. "She's stable," he said. "Pelvic fracture was complex. We placed external fixation to stabilize it. There was bleeding from a torn artery, which we repaired. She lost a fair amount of blood, but we transfused her and she's responding well. When will she wake up? She's in recovery now. Should be conscious within the hour. She's going to be in significant pain, but we'll manage it." He paused. "Has anyone talked to her about her family's condition?" I briefed her before surgery, but a lot has changed since then. Sophie's had complications. Who's going to tell her? We both knew what he was really asking. Who was going to break a mother's heart on Christmas Eve by telling her that her baby daughter's condition was critical? "I'll do it," I heard myself say. Dr. Thompson nodded. "Rather you than me. Good luck." I went to the surgical recovery unit and waited for Catherine to wake up. The recovery room was quieter than the ER. Dimmer lights, softer sounds, a sense of post-surgical calm. Catherine was in a bed near the back, connected to monitors, her pelvis wrapped in a metal frame that looked medieval, but was actually cutting-edge stabilization technology. At 12:15 a.m., technically Christmas Day now. Her eyes fluttered open. Where? She started, confused. I moved to her side. Mrs. Brennan, you're in the recovery room. Your surgery went well. You're going to be okay. She focused on me, memory returning. My family. Where's my family? Your husband is stable in the neuro ICU. He's being monitored closely. Emma and Kyle are both doing well. Emma's arm is set. Kyle's breathing has improved. They're safe. And Sophie? I took a breath. Sophie is in the pediatric ICU. Her heart was injured in the accident. She's on medications to support her heart function, and the team is watching her very closely. Is she going to die? Catherine's voice was flat, like she was bracing for the blow. The team is doing everything possible to prevent that. But I won't lie to you, she's very sick. Catherine closed her eyes. Tears leaked out from under her lids. We were going to Christmas dinner, that's all. Just dinner. I know. My mother made a roast. She always makes roast beef for Christmas. Sophie loves mashed potatoes. She gets them all over her face. Catherine's voice broke. She was wearing her Christmas dress, red velvet with a white collar. She looked like a little angel. I didn't know what to say. There were no words adequate to this moment. Can I see her? Catherine asked. Not yet. You need to recover from surgery first. But soon. I need to see my baby. I need to see all of them. I need to know they're real. They're alive. They're still my family. The desperation in her voice was visceral. This was a mother whose world had been torn apart, who needed the physical proof that her children still existed. I'm going to arrange something, I said. It was a promise I didn't know if I could keep, but I made it anyway. I left Catherine in recovery and went to find Dr. Vale. She was in her office, a small, cluttered space filled with medical journals and coffee cups, reviewing charts. Vale, I need to arrange for the Brennan family to see each other. The mother is out of surgery, conscious and desperate to see her children. The father is still unconscious, but the children need to see their parents. Sophie obviously can't be moved, but maybe we could. No. Vale's voice was firm. The mother just had major surgery. Moving her is medically inadvisable. The infant is critically ill and connected to multiple life support devices. Moving her is impossible. The father is unconscious with a brain injury. The logistics alone, but the family needs their members to survive. That's the priority. Emotional comfort comes second to medical stability. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say that sometimes emotional stability was part of medical stability, that a mother's need to see her children was as real as any physical injury. But Vale was the attending, and I was the resident. Is there any way? I asked quietly. Any compromise? Vale was silent for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she sighed. Video calls. Set up tablets with the conscious family members. Let them see each other's faces, hear each other's voices. It's not ideal, but it's something. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just make sure no one deteriorates while you're playing family therapist. I spent the next hour coordinating the video calls. Emma in her room, Catherine in recovery, Kyle who'd woken up confused and scared. I set up tablets, adjusted camera angles, and connected the calls. Emma saw her mother first. Mom! Her face crumpled. Are you okay? I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm okay. How's your arm? It hurts, but I'm fine. Mom, what happened? I don't understand what happened. There was an accident, but we're all going to be okay. The lie was necessary, kind. Because how do you tell your 14-year-old daughter that her baby sister might die? Kyle came on screen next, and Catherine started crying at the sight of him. Baby, you're okay. You're safe. Mom, where's Dad? Where's Sophie? Why can't I see them? Dad's resting. He hit his head and he needs to sleep to get better. Sophie is being taken care of by special doctors, but they're both going to be fine. More necessary lies. Or maybe they were hopes disguised as facts. The three of them talked for 20 minutes. Superficial conversation about the hospital food, about Christmas presents they'd have to open late, about Grandma who was probably worried sick. Nobody mentioned the possibility that this could be their last Christmas as a complete family. After the call ended, I sat outside Emma's room, emotionally exhausted. It was 1:30 a.m. on Christmas morning. Somewhere in this hospital, families were welcoming newborns, celebrating life. In other rooms, families were saying goodbye, mourning death. And the Brennan family existed in between, in that liminal space where outcomes were uncertain and hope warred with fear. My phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Chen in the PICU. Sophie's blood pressure is dropping again. We're going to need to put her on ECMO. Thought you'd want to know. ECMO. The last resort. The machine that would keep Sophie alive while her heart tried to heal. If it could heal. I went back upstairs to the PICU. The ECMO team was already there, preparing equipment. Sophie looked impossibly small on the bed, surrounded by machines and monitors and desperate people trying to save her. "Explain ECMO to me," I said to Dr. Chen, in terms I can relay to her mother. "We'll put large tubes into blood vessels in her neck. The tubes connect to a machine that will take her blood out, add oxygen, remove carbon dioxide, and pump it back into her body. Essentially, the machine will do the work of her heart and lungs while they rest and hopefully recover. Risks? Bleeding, infection, stroke, equipment malfunction. But without it, she'll die. Her heart can't sustain her on its own. How long does she stay on it? Days to weeks, depending on how quickly her heart recovers. If it recovers. If. The word that contained universes of uncertainty. When are you starting? As soon as we get consent. We need a parent's signature. The father is unconscious. The mother just had surgery. Then we need the mother's consent. It's the law. I understood the necessity, but I hated it. Catherine Brennan, barely an hour out of major surgery, drugged with pain medication, traumatized and terrified, would have to make a decision about her infant daughter's life. I went back downstairs to recovery. Catherine was dozing, her face peaceful for the first time since she'd arrived. I hated to wake her, but there was no choice. "Catherine," I said softly, "I need to talk to you about Sophie." Her eyes opened immediately, all trace of sleep vanishing. "What's wrong?" "Her heart isn't strong enough to support her body on its own. The doctors want to put her on a machine called ECMO that will do the work of her heart and lungs while they heal. Will it save her? It gives her the best chance, but there are risks." "What risks?" I explained them as gently as I could. The bleeding, the strokes, the possibility that even with ECMO, her heart might not recover. Catherine listened with a face carved from stone. When I finished, she said, "Will she suffer? She'll be sedated. She won't be aware of what's happening. And if we don't do it, she'll die, probably within hours." Catherine closed her eyes. "Then we do it. Of course we do it. Where do I sign?" I handed her the tablet with the consent forms. She signed with a hand that shook, her signature barely legible. When she was done, she looked at me with eyes full of anguish. "I can't lose her," she whispered. "I can't lose my baby. Not on Christmas. Please, not on Christmas. We're going to fight for her," I said. "I promise you that." I took the signed consent back to the PICU. The ECMO team began immediately. I watched them work, skilled hands placing large cannulas into Sophie's tiny neck vessels, connecting tubes to the machine, adjusting flow rates and pressures. It took nearly an hour. Sophie's body was so small that every movement had to be precise, careful. At 3:07 a.m. on Christmas morning, the ECMO machine started. Sophie's blood began flowing out of her body, through the machine, and back again. The monitors showed immediate improvement. Her blood pressure rose, her oxygen levels climbed. The machine was keeping her alive. But Sophie herself, the little girl who loved mashed potatoes and wore red velvet dresses, was somewhere unreachable, suspended between life and death, existing only because technology refused to let her go. Christmas morning dawned gray and cold. I'd been awake for 24 hours straight, running on adrenaline and terrible coffee. The ER waiting room had a handful of people waiting, minor emergencies that had occurred overnight, people who'd woken up Christmas morning and realized they couldn't wait any longer for medical care. The Brennan family's status had remained relatively stable through the night. Catherine had been moved to a regular hospital room, though she could barely move due to her pelvic fixation. Robert remained unconscious but stable in the neuro ICU. Emma and Kyle had been admitted to the pediatric ward, physically healing but emotionally devastated. Sophie was alive on ECMO, existing in that liminal space between saved and lost. At 7 a.m., Dr. Vale found me in the residence lounge, where I'd gone to splash water on my face and try to feel human again. "Go home, Reyes." "I can't. The Brennan family. We'll be here when you get back. You've been on for 24 hours. You're no good to anyone exhausted." Her voice softened slightly. "I know you care about this case, but you have to take care of yourself too. What if something changes while I'm gone? Then we'll call you. But right now, everything is as stable as it's going to be. Go home. Sleep. Come back tonight if you want." I wanted to argue, but my body was screaming for rest. My hands shook slightly from fatigue. My eyes burned. My judgment was probably already compromised. 4 hours, I negotiated. "I'll go home, sleep for 4 hours, and come back. 8 hours minimum. That's not a suggestion, that's an order." I drove home through empty Christmas morning streets. Most businesses were closed. Houses glowed with lights and decorations. Through windows, I could see families gathered around trees, opening presents, celebrating. The contrast between their joy and the Brennan family's suffering felt obscene. My apartment was cold and dark. I turned on the heat, microwaved some leftover food I wasn't hungry enough to eat, and collapsed on my bed, still wearing my scrubs. I meant to sleep immediately. Instead, I lay there, my mind racing through everything that had happened. 5 people in a car, driving to Christmas dinner. A moment of bad timing. A truck driver falling asleep. Physics and velocity and the fragility of human bodies. And now a family torn apart, scattered across different hospital units, each member healing or not healing in isolation. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Merry Christmas, mijo. We love you. Hope your shift wasn't too hard." I typed back, "Merry Christmas, mama. It was hard, but I helped some people. Love you too." Sleep finally claimed me around 8:30 a.m. I woke at 2 p.m. to my phone ringing. The hospital. "Dr. Reyes, this is Dr. Chen from PICU. Sophie Brennan is showing signs of cardiac recovery. I thought you'd want to know." I sat up so fast I got dizzy. "Recovery? Already?" "It's early, but her heart function is improving. The ECMO machine is doing less work because her heart is starting to do more. It's a good sign. When will you know if she can come off ECMO? We need at least 48 hours of improvement before we can consider weaning her off, but this is the first positive development since she arrived." After hanging up, I texted Dr. Vale asking if I could come back early. Her response, "If you're genuinely rested, yes. If you're running on adrenaline and false energy, no." I was genuinely rested. 4 hours of deep sleep had done more for me than I'd expected. I showered, changed into clean scrubs, and drove back to St. Halstead. The hospital felt different in daylight on Christmas, quieter. Most elective procedures were canceled. Only emergency staff and patients who couldn't go home remained. The decorations looked sadder somehow, the tinsel less shiny, the tree less magical. I went first to the PICU to check on Sophie. Dr. Chen was right. Her numbers looked better. Not good, but better. The ECMO machine's flow rate had been decreased and Sophie's heart was picking up the slack. It was the first real hope we'd had. Next, I checked on Robert in the neuro ICU. Dr. Pierce, the neurosurgery resident, was at his bedside. "Any changes?" I asked. "Actually, yes. He's showing more purposeful movements. His GCS is up to 11. He's not fully conscious yet, but he's improving. Will he have neurological deficits? Too early to tell, but the fact that he's improving at all is encouraging." She checked her tablet. "The repeat CT this morning showed the subdural hematoma is stable, not expanding. We're cautiously optimistic." 2 pieces of good news. I hardly dared to hope. I went to the pediatric ward to see Emma and Kyle. They were in adjacent rooms, and someone had moved Kyle's bed so the siblings could see each other through the open doors. Emma was reading to Kyle, some children's book about Christmas, her voice soft and steady. When she saw me, she stopped reading. "Dr. Reyes, have you heard about Sophie?" "I have. Her heart is getting stronger. And Dad? Also improving. He's starting to wake up." Emma burst into tears. Relief tears, not grief tears. Kyle climbed out of his bed and ran to his sister, hugging her awkwardly around her casted arm. Watching them, I felt something tight in my chest finally loosen. "Can we see them?" Emma asked. "Can we see Dad and Sophie?" "Not yet, but maybe soon. I'm working on it." I left them together and went to find Catherine. She was in a private room on the surgical floor, sitting up in bed despite obvious pain. A nurse was adjusting her medications. "Mrs. Brennan, I have updates." And she looked at me with a mixture of hope and terror. "Tell me." "Sophie's heart is showing signs of recovery. It's early, but it's positive. Robert is waking up. He's not fully conscious yet, but he's improving. Emma and Kyle are both doing well." Catherine's face transformed. "They're going to be okay? All of them? We're not out of the woods yet, but things are moving in the right direction." She started crying, deep, shaking sobs of relief. "Thank God. Thank God." The nurse finished with the medications and left us alone. Catherine wiped her eyes with a tissue. "I need to see them," she said. "I need to see my family. I know you said it's not possible, but please, there has to be a way." I thought about the logistics. Catherine couldn't walk due to her pelvic injury. Robert was in the neuro ICU, barely conscious. Sophie was on ECMO, connected to machines. Emma and Kyle were the only ones potentially mobile. "What if I bring Emma and Kyle to you?" I suggested. "They can move around. You can see 2 of your children at least." "And Robert?" And Sophie? I'll see if we can arrange video calls again. It's not the same as being together, but it's something. Please, I'm begging you. I need to see my family on Christmas Day. I spent the next 2 hours coordinating what should have been simple, but was made complicated by hospital regulations, equipment limitations, and the medical reality of 5 critically injured patients. But eventually, with Dr. Vale's reluctant blessing, I managed to arrange it. Emma and Kyle were brought to their mother's room in wheelchairs, unnecessary medically, but it made transport easier. When they entered and saw Catherine, both children started crying. Catherine held out her arms, and they carefully climbed onto her bed, mindful of her injuries. "My babies," Catherine whispered, holding them. "My beautiful babies." "Mom, we were so scared," Emma said. I know, but we're okay. We're all going to be okay." Kyle buried his face in his mother's shoulder. "I want to go home. I want it to be Christmas at home." "We will, sweetheart. Soon. We'll go home and we'll have Christmas. Just a little late." I set up the tablets for video calls. First, we connected to the neuro ICU. Robert was more conscious now, able to track movement with his eyes even if he couldn't speak yet. When he saw Catherine and the children on the screen, something shifted in his expression. Recognition, relief, love. "Robert," Catherine said, her voice breaking. "We're here. We're all here. You're going to be okay." He couldn't respond, but his eyes said everything. Then we connected to Sophie's PICU room. The baby was sedated, motionless, surrounded by machines. She didn't look peaceful. She looked absent, like a body without a soul. But she was alive, and her heart was healing. "Hi, Sophie," Emma said to the screen. "It's Emma. I love you. Please get better." Kyle was quieter, staring at his baby sister with wide eyes. "Why is she so still?" "She's sleeping," Catherine explained. "The doctors gave her medicine to help her sleep while the machines help her body heal. Will she wake up?" "Yes, I believe she will." It wasn't a guarantee, but it was faith. And sometimes faith was all you had. The family spent an hour together like this, fragmented, mediated through technology, but together. They talked about nothing important. Christmas presents they'd open eventually, what they'd eat when they got home, the dog who was staying with Catherine's mother and probably missing them. Normal conversation. A return to normalcy even in the midst of crisis. When it was time to disconnect, Emma didn't want to let go. "Can we stay longer? The doctors need to take care of everyone," Catherine said gently. "But we'll do this again tomorrow. And hopefully soon, we'll all be in the same room for real." After Emma and Kyle were taken back to their rooms, Catherine looked at me with exhausted gratitude. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for making this happen." "You're welcome. Dr. Reyes, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you believe we'll all survive this, honestly?" I thought about how to answer. I could give her medical statistics, survival rates, prognoses, or I could give her truth. "I believe you have the best chance possible," I said. "Sophie's heart is recovering faster than expected. Robert is waking up. Emma and Kyle are healing. You're strong. Your family is strong. I can't promise a specific outcome, but I can promise that everyone here is fighting for you. That's all I can ask for." After leaving Catherine's room, I went to the cafeteria. It was nearly 6 p.m. and I hadn't eaten since the morning. The cafeteria was mostly empty, just a few staff members grabbing quick meals between shifts. They'd made an effort to serve something special for Christmas, turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, but it was still hospital food, which meant it was well-intentioned but not quite right. I sat alone at a table, eating mechanically, when Dr. Santos appeared and sat down across from me. "Heard you pulled off a family reunion today." "Barely. It was complicated. Everything about that family is complicated." He opened his container of food. "But you're handling it well. Vale's impressed even if she won't say it." "I'm just doing what needs to be done." "No, you're doing more than that. You're treating a family, not just 5 individual patients. That's rare, Reyes. Most doctors compartmentalize. They treat the injury in front of them and don't think about the broader context. You're thinking holistically. Isn't that what we're supposed to do?" "Supposed to?" "Yes. Actually do? Not as often as we should." He took a bite of turkey. "This is terrible, by the way. It's Christmas turkey in a hospital cafeteria. What did you expect?" "Nothing, which is why I'm still disappointed." He set down his fork. "Seriously though, you've done good work. The family knows it, the staff knows it. Don't burn yourself out, but don't stop caring either." After dinner, I made final rounds on each family member. Robert was sleeping peacefully in the neuro ICU. Emma and Kyle were watching a movie together. Catherine was resting, her pain medications finally giving her some relief. Sophie remained on ECMO, stable, her small body fighting to heal. At 11 p.m., my official shift ended. Dr. Vale found me updating charts. "Go home, Reyes. I'm almost done." "That's an order, not a suggestion. You've worked 36 of the last 48 hours. You need rest. What if something happens overnight? Then the overnight team will handle it. You're not the only doctor in this hospital." She paused. "You did exceptional work today. The Brennan family is lucky to have you, but you can't be everything to everyone. Learn that lesson now before it breaks you." I drove home through dark streets, thinking about her words. Could I be everything to everyone? Should I even try? Where was the line between dedication and self-destruction? I didn't have answers. I just knew that tomorrow I'd come back and keep trying. December 26th, the day after Christmas. The hospital had a different energy, less desperate, more routine. The holiday was over. Life was returning to normal, whatever normal meant. I arrived for my shift at 7 a.m. and immediately checked on the Brennan family. The overnight notes were encouraging. Robert had spoken his first words around 3 a.m., asking for Catherine. Sophie had been weaned to lower ECMO settings. Emma and Kyle had slept through the night. Catherine's pain was being managed effectively. Progress. Real, measurable progress. At 9 a.m., Dr. Pierce called me to the neuro ICU. "Robert Brennan wants to talk to you." I entered his room to find him propped up in bed, still connected to monitors but undeniably conscious. His face was bruised, his head wrapped in bandages, but his eyes were clear. "Dr. Reyes?" His voice was hoarse from the breathing tube that had been removed overnight. "Mr. Brennan, it's good to see you awake. My family. Where's my family? Are they alive?" The last thing he remembered was the accident, the moment of impact, the chaos, the fear. He didn't know that he'd been unconscious for nearly 2 days, that his family had been scattered across the hospital, that his infant daughter had nearly died. "Your family is alive," I said. "All of them. Everyone is healing." His eyes filled with tears. "Catherine? Emma? Kyle? Sophie? All alive, all improving. Would you like me to explain each person's condition?" He nodded, and I gave him the full rundown. I watched his face as I spoke. Relief when I described Emma's broken arm and Kyle's resolved breathing problems. Fear when I explained Catherine's pelvic injury, and raw anguish when I detailed Sophie's cardiac arrest and ECMO support. "Can I see them?" he asked when I finished. "Soon. You need to be medically stable first, but we can arrange a video call. I need to see Catherine. She must be terrified. She's been asking about you constantly. I'll set up a call now." I arranged the tablet and connected them. Catherine's face appeared on screen and both of them started crying. "Robert. Oh God, Robert. Katie, are you okay? Are the kids okay?" "We're okay. We're all okay," she was sobbing. "I thought I'd lost you. When they pulled you out of the car, there was so much blood. I'm here. I'm right here. We're all going to be fine." They talked for 30 minutes. I left them privacy, standing outside the room but ready to intervene if Robert showed signs of fatigue or distress. When the call ended, I returned to find him exhausted but more at peace. "Thank you," he said, "for taking care of my family. Catherine told me what you've done, coordinating everyone's care, arranging calls, making sure we could stay connected. That's my job." "No, it's more than that. You didn't have to care as much as you did." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just nodded and left him to rest. At 2 p.m., Dr. Chen called me to the PICU. "Sophie's ready." "Ready for what?" "Ready to come off ECMO. Her heart function has improved enough that we think she can sustain herself. We're going to do a trial off the circuit." "How does that work?" "We'll clamp off the ECMO tubes, essentially forcing her heart to do all the work. If she maintains adequate blood pressure and oxygenation for a few hours, we'll remove the cannulas completely. And if she can't maintain it, we reconnect her and try again in a few days." The trial began at 2:30 p.m. I stood in Sophie's room, watching the monitors as the ECMO flow was gradually decreased and then stopped. For a few seconds, everyone held their breath. Then Sophie's heart rate appeared on the monitor, fast but regular. Her blood pressure held. Her oxygen saturation stayed in the 90s. "She's doing it," Dr. Chen said. "Her heart is doing it on its own." We watched for an hour. Sophie remained stable. At 3:30 p.m., Dr. Chen made the decision. "We're taking her off. Remove the cannulas." The process was delicate. Removing large tubes from the blood vessels in her neck, applying pressure to prevent bleeding, monitoring constantly for complications. But Sophie tolerated it. By 4 p.m., she was breathing on her own with just a ventilator for support, her heart pumping without mechanical assistance. She wasn't out of danger yet. She'd need days or weeks of recovery, careful monitoring, medications, but she'd crossed a crucial threshold. Her body was healing itself. I called Catherine immediately with the news. Sophie's off ECMO. Her heart is working on its own. Catherine's sob of relief was audible through the phone. Thank God. Oh, thank God. She's not out of the woods yet, but this is a major step forward. Can I see her? Please, I need to see my baby in person. I discussed it with the surgical team managing Catherine's care. Her pelvic fixation was stable. If we were very careful, she could be transported in a specialized bed to the PICU. At 6 p.m. on December 26th, we moved Catherine Brennan to see her youngest daughter for the first time since the accident. The logistics were complicated. Moving a patient with a pelvic injury required careful coordination, but we managed it. When Catherine was wheeled into Sophie's PICU room and saw her daughter, pale, thin, covered in IV lines and monitoring equipment, but alive and breathing, she broke down completely. My baby, my sweet baby girl. A nurse lowered the bed rail so Catherine could reach over and touch Sophie's hand. The moment their skin made contact, Sophie's eyes fluttered open. It might have been coincidence. It might have been the noise or the movement. But in that moment, it looked like recognition. Like Sophie knew her mother was there. Hi, sweetheart, Catherine whispered. Mommy's here, I'm right here. Sophie's fingers curled slightly around Catherine's hand. The room was silent except for the beeping of monitors and Catherine's quiet crying. This was the moment when we knew the family would survive intact. Not undamaged, not unchanged, but together. Dr. Vale appeared in the doorway. She watched for a moment, then caught my eye and nodded. A gesture of approval, acknowledgement that I'd done right. Catherine stayed with Sophie for 2 hours before she had to be moved back to her room. It was past visiting hours, against multiple regulations, but no one had the heart to enforce the rules. This was a mother who'd nearly lost her child. She deserved every second. Over the next week, the Brennan family's recovery continued. Robert was moved out of the ICU to a regular room. Emma's arm was healing well. Kyle's chest had stopped hurting. Catherine was beginning physical therapy to eventually walk again. And Sophie, miraculous Sophie, was weaned off the ventilator and started breathing completely on her own. By December 30th, the family was consolidated enough that we could move them all to the same floor, a family unit where they could heal together rather than in isolation. I watched them that evening, Robert in a wheelchair holding Sophie on his lap, Catherine in her hospital bed, Emma and Kyle on either side of her. A family reunited, scarred but whole. Dr. Reyes, Robert called when he saw me. Come in. I entered their room. It was decorated now. Someone had brought Christmas decorations, hung stockings on the IV poles, put a small artificial tree on the windowsill. We wanted to give you something, Emma said. She handed me a card, handmade, with drawings from Kyle and heartfelt words from Emma. Thank you for saving our family. You're our Christmas miracle. Love, the Brennans. We didn't really celebrate Christmas this year, Catherine said, but we're alive to celebrate next year, and that's because of people like you who didn't give up on us. I was just doing my job. No, Robert said firmly. You were doing more than your job. You were taking care of a family, not just treating injuries. You kept us connected when we were scattered. You fought for us when we couldn't fight for ourselves. Sophie reached for me with chubby toddler hands. I let her grab my finger and she smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her. She likes you, Catherine said. She knows you saved her. I stayed with them for a while, listening to them plan their belated Christmas celebration at home, talking about recovery timelines and physical therapy and the long road ahead. They had months of healing ahead of them. Catherine would need extensive rehabilitation for her pelvis. Robert would need monitoring for potential long-term effects of his brain injury. Sophie would need cardiac follow-ups. Emma and Kyle would need therapy to process the trauma, but they'd face it together. As a family, the Brennan family was discharged in stages throughout January. Kyle went home first, 10 days after the accident. Emma followed a week later, her arm in a cast but otherwise healthy. Robert was discharged on January 12th, with instructions for rest and gradual return to activity. Catherine stayed longest because of her pelvic injury, finally going home on January 20th. Sophie was the last to leave. She'd spent 3 weeks in the hospital, first in critical condition, then slowly improving, finally healthy enough for discharge. On January 24th, I was there when her parents took her home. Ready to go home, Sophie? Catherine asked, buckling her into the car seat. A new car seat, in a new car, The old vehicle had been totaled in the accident. Sophie babbled happily, unaware of how close she'd come to never going home at all. Robert shook my hand. "Thank you, Dr. Reyes, for everything. Take care of each other," I said, "and come back for your follow-up appointments." "We will, every single one." I watched them drive away, a complete family heading home together, and felt something I hadn't expected. Hope. Pure, uncomplicated hope that they'd be okay. Over the following months, I saw the Brennan family regularly for follow-ups. Catherine's physical therapy was progressing well. She'd graduated from a wheelchair to a walker to walking independently. Robert had recovered fully from his brain injury with no apparent deficits. Emma's arm healed perfectly. Kyle showed no long-term effects from his chest trauma. Sophie's heart function had returned to normal, and she was hitting all her developmental milestones. By April, they were thriving. One afternoon in late April, I was finishing up clinic hours when the Brennan family arrived for Sophie's cardiology follow-up. They brought homemade cookies for the staff. "We made them together," Emma said proudly. "It's our new family tradition, making cookies once a month." "Why once a month?" I asked. "Because that's how often we're at the hospital," Kyle said matter-of-factly. "So we might as well make it special." Catherine laughed. "We decided that since we spend so much time here anyway, we should make it a positive experience. So we bring treats, we visit the staff who took care of us. We remind ourselves how lucky we are." "How are you really doing?" I asked Catherine privately, while Robert took the kids to play in the waiting area. She thought about the question. "Some days are hard. I have nightmares about the accident. Emma has anxiety about car rides. Robert gets headaches that scare us even though the doctors say they're normal. Sophie still has trouble sleeping through the night. That all sounds like normal recovery from trauma." "I know, and we're in therapy. All of us, individually and as a family. We're processing it." She paused. "But here's the thing. We're together. We survived. We get to have hard days because we're alive to have them. That's not nothing. That's everything. We're having a belated Christmas celebration next weekend," she said. "We postponed it originally because we were all in the hospital, and then it felt weird to celebrate after we got home. But we decided, we're going to have it now. Christmas in April. Everyone's coming. My mother, Robert's parents, our friends. We're going to open the presents that sat under the tree for 3 months, and we're going to celebrate being alive." "That sounds perfect. Will you come? I know it's outside normal doctor-patient boundaries, but you're part of our story. You're the reason we have a story to continue." I thought about professional boundaries, about maintaining appropriate distance. Then I thought about this family who'd been torn apart and stitched back together, who'd faced death and chose to celebrate life. "I'd be honored," I said. The belated Christmas celebration was held on a sunny April afternoon at the Brennan family's home. The house was decorated with Christmas lights that seemed surreal in spring sunshine. The tree was artificial but beautiful, surrounded by presents that had waited 4 months to be opened. The family gathered in the living room. Catherine and Robert, Emma and Kyle and Sophie, grandparents, friends, and me, the doctor who'd become part of their story. "Before we open presents," Robert said, "I want to say something." The room quieted. 4 months ago, our family almost ended. We were driving to Christmas dinner, and in seconds, everything changed. We could have died. Some of us nearly did. His voice caught, but we didn't. We survived because of incredible medical care, because of people who refused to give up on us, and because we're stubborn. People laughed. "This is our second chance Christmas," Robert continued. "A celebration of life and family and the gift of tomorrow that we almost lost. So before we open presents and eat too much food and pretend it's December when it's clearly April, I want to say, I love you all. I'm grateful for you all. And I promise never to take a single day together for granted." Catherine wiped her eyes. Emma hugged her father. Kyle climbed into his mother's lap. Sophie, blissfully unaware of the weight of the moment, tried to eat wrapping paper. They opened presents, toys and books and practical items that had been purchased in December for a Christmas that never happened. The gifts were outdated now, some of the toys no longer age-appropriate, but no one cared. This wasn't about the presents. It was about the act of celebrating together. I stayed for dinner, a feast that Catherine insisted was similar to what had been planned for Christmas Eve. Roast beef, mashed potatoes, vegetables, rolls, pie for dessert. Sophie did indeed get mashed potatoes all over her face, just as Catherine had predicted months ago in the ER. After dinner, Catherine pulled me aside. "I want to show you something." She led me to a wall in their hallway where they'd hung photos. There was a picture from Christmas Eve, taken before the accident, showing the family dressed up, happy, whole. Next to it was a picture from the hospital. All 5 of them together on video screens, fragmented but connected. And finally, a new picture from today. The family together in their living room, healed, scarred, alive. "This is our story," Catherine said. "Before, during, and after. We don't hide the hard parts. We remember them because they make us appreciate this." She gestured to the house around us, filled with laughter and family. "You've built something beautiful," I said. "We've rebuilt something beautiful. There's a difference." I understood what she meant. This family wasn't the same as it had been before the accident. They'd been broken and reassembled, and the scars showed. But those scars were proof of survival, evidence of strength, markers of a story that continued. Before I left that evening, Sophie toddled over to me. She was walking now, steady on her feet, a little girl instead of an infant. She held out a small wrapped box. "For you," Emma translated. Mom helped her pick it out. I opened it to find a Christmas ornament, a silver heart with an inscription, "To Dr. Reyes, who gave us our second chance Christmas. With love, the Brennan family." "So you remember us," Catherine said. "Every year when you decorate for Christmas, remember the family who almost didn't make it but did." I couldn't speak. I just nodded, blinking back tears. 2 years later, I was finishing my residency at St. Halstead, preparing for the next phase of my career. It was December again, Christmas season, the time when the ER filled with chaos and tragedy and occasional miracles. I'd kept in touch with the Brennan family, Christmas cards, occasional emails, pictures of Sophie's birthdays and Emma's high school achievements and Kyle's soccer games. They'd become part of my life in a way that blurred professional boundaries but felt right anyway. On December 24th, exactly 2 years after the accident, I received a text from Catherine. "Christmas Eve. Thinking of you. Come to dinner if you're not working?" I wasn't working. For the first time in 3 years, I had Christmas Eve off. I drove to their house as the sun was setting, carrying wine and a sense of full circle completion. The house was decorated beautifully, lights twinkling against the winter darkness. Through the windows, I could see the family moving around, setting the table, laughing. Catherine answered the door with Sophie on her hip. Sophie was 3 now, talking in full sentences, a healthy, happy toddler with no signs of the cardiac trauma that had nearly killed her. "Dr. Reyes!" Sophie squealed. "You came to Christmas!" "I did. Thank you for inviting me." The evening was perfect in its normalcy. Dinner with a family who'd survived the unsurvivable. Conversation about ordinary things, school and work and holiday plans. Emma was applying to colleges. Kyle was obsessed with basketball. Sophie was learning to sing and insisted on performing every Christmas carol she knew. Robert pulled me aside after dinner. "We're going to my mother-in-law's house tomorrow. Same place we were heading 2 years ago. How does that feel?" Terrifying and necessary. We need to finish that journey. We need to prove to ourselves that we can drive that route, celebrate that dinner, and come home safely. That's incredibly brave. No, it's incredibly human. We can't let fear stop us from living. That would be a different kind of death. Before I left that night, the family gathered for a photo, their annual Christmas Eve picture. This year, I was included. "You're part of our story," Catherine insisted. "You're part of our family now." As I drove home through snowy streets, I thought about the nature of families, not just biological connections, but chosen ones, forged through shared trauma and survival. The Brennan family had chosen to include me in their circle, and I'd chosen to stay connected to them. Medical school had taught me to treat diseases. Residency had taught me to treat patients. But the Brennan family had taught me something more important: to treat people as whole, complex, connected beings whose medical crises existed within larger stories of love and loss and resilience. I hung their ornament on my small Christmas tree that night, the silver heart that said "Second Chance Christmas." A reminder that sometimes the greatest gift medicine can give isn't just survival, but the opportunity to continue the story. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Merry Christmas, mijo. We're so proud of you." I typed back, "Merry Christmas, Mama. I spent the evening with a family I helped save 2 years ago. I think I'm doing okay at this doctor thing." Her response, "You're doing more than okay. You're making a difference. That's all we ever hoped for you." I thought about difference, about what it meant to truly make one. I'd saved Sophie's life that Christmas Eve 2 years ago, performing CPR on a tiny body that was more death than life. But the real difference wasn't just in that moment of medical intervention. It was in everything that followed. Coordinating care, keeping the family connected, fighting for them to heal together rather than in isolation. The Brennan family hadn't just survived physically. They'd survived as a unit, as a system of love that refused to be fractured by trauma. And I'd played a part in that. Not the only part, not even the most important part, but a part nonetheless. Through my window, I could see neighbors' houses lit up with Christmas decorations, families inside, celebrating, loving each other, making memories. Most of them would never experience trauma like the Brennans had. Most of them would never know how fragile life is, how quickly everything can change. But the Brennans knew. They'd learned it the hardest way possible. And they'd chosen to respond with gratitude, celebration, and a determination to make every day count. That was the lesson they'd taught me. Not about medicine, but about being human. That survival isn't just about heartbeats and breathing. It's about finding meaning in the aftermath, about rebuilding what's broken, about celebrating second chances with the full knowledge of how easily they could have been lost. I turned off the lights and went to bed, thinking about tomorrow. Christmas Day, a day of rest and celebration and gratitude for the families, biological and chosen, that made life worth living. Somewhere across town, the Brennan family was probably settling in for the night, tucking children into bed, checking on Sophie one extra time, the way parents do when they almost lost a child, holding each other a little tighter, the way people do when they know how fast everything can disappear, and tomorrow they'd wake up together. They'd open presents, eat too much food, make memories to replace the ones that had been stolen 2 years ago on a dark highway where a moment of bad timing had nearly ended everything. But it hadn't ended. They'd survived. They'd healed. They'd celebrated. And I'd been privileged to be part of that story. That was the gift. Not just that I'd helped save lives, but that I'd witnessed what people do with the lives they're given back. How they choose to live when they know how close they came to dying. How they find joy in ordinary moments because they understand that ordinary moments are actually extraordinary gifts. Tomorrow I'd spend Christmas with my own family. I'd hug my parents a little tighter. I'd be more present in each moment. I'd remember that every ordinary day is a second chance for someone, somewhere. And when I returned to the hospital for my next shift, I'd carry the Brennan family story with me. A reminder that sometimes the most important thing we can do as doctors isn't just treating the injury in front of us. It's remembering that behind every injury is a family hoping for a second chance Christmas.